Welcome to this episode 1 in the long-term series Whole of Community Change, featuring Annalise Jennings, Director of Dynamic Exchange, Maryanne Coconut, Elder and Representative of Napranum Aboriginal Shire Council in Queensland, Australia, and Waqata, former Deputy Mayor of Napranum. Annalise Jennings, as the Director of Dynamic Exchange, has over 25 years' experience in senior roles in financial services and other sectors, including property and small business. Jennings is an experienced facilitator and has led business transformation in project management in large organizations and has an extensive background in risk management and organizational culture. This experience has been gained through working in India, Australia, and New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. She has spoken on transformation and maximizing human potential in a variety of business and community forums. Jennings is passionate about teams and helping them discover healthy working relationships and celebrating success and empowerment. She balances her time between key corporate engagements, her part-time career as an alternative health practitioner, and has always combined her working life with parenting and study. She strongly believes in human potential and is a passionate advocate of ethical corporate and individual behavior in the business community. As Councillor and Elder of the Napranum Aboriginal community, Maryanne Coconut's responsibilities include education and social services. She believes in education as essential to community progress and has led the way, completing a bachelor's in community management. She was recently quoted, "The people are the caretakers of this land, given to us by the Creator Spirit, who is the Creator. We acknowledge him with adoration and thanksgiving. We, the elders, are the gatekeepers, and this is an age-old role given to us by our ancestors. Our knowledge and wisdom of our country is still strong and will remain invisible and well guarded in our spirit till we die. Our spirit will pass this knowledge on to the next elder in line." And finally, Waqata, former Deputy Mayor of Napranum, who in her previous position as Community Engagement Officer was responsible for implementation of the whole of community change. She is also an elder of the community and holds a diploma in social services. In episode 1 of this new long-term series, Whole of Community Change, I'm joined by Annalise Jennings, Director of Dynamic Exchange, Maryanne Coconut, Elder and Representative of the Napranum Aboriginal Shire Council, and Waqata, former Deputy Mayor of Napranum, at DG Networks, a member of Universal One Broadcasting. Welcome to DG Networks, a member of Universal One Broadcasting, and to the long-term series Whole of Community Change. In our episode 1 in the series, and a great pleasure to be talking to Annalise Jennings, Maryanne Coconut, and Waqata. And I'll start with Annalise, if I may. Annalise, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, David.
Maryanne Coconut, Maryanne, welcome to you.
Thank you, David.
And Bo, welcome to you, your first appearance on the series, a great pleasure.
Thank you, David.
First episode of the program, we have completed our introductory program, a great success. I'd like to turn to yourself, if I may, first, Annalise Jennings, Director of Dynamic Exchange. For our listeners and new listeners today to the series, a brief overview of your work and the series itself, if you would kindly.
Thank you, David. Dynamic Exchange is all about the making and building of community from the inside. It's about people helping each other, whether we're corporate, government, NGOs, strategic partners, community leaders, all of us coming together to share our wisdom, our stories, our knowledge, and to create real change. So Whole of Community Change, which is a program that I've co-created with the community of Napranum, is all about finding the balance between the viability of community and the spiritual well-being of its people. And so this is a program where every sector of the community gets involved in the building of their visionary plan. Everybody has a voice, everybody is heard, everybody makes a contribution. And as a result of that, we've seen phenomenal change in this community over a very, very short space of time.
Annalise, thank you so much for that. Let me turn to Maryanne here today in episode 1. What are your feelings as we proceed now with this series that explores the transformation of your community?
My feelings is that it's a spiritual journey, and I feel that I've journeyed to you and back. And I'm so overjoyed to be here talking to you about the community change, which I have witnessed. It's a great progress for our community.
Maryanne, thank you so much. And introducing Bo, thank you so much for joining us today. You are the former Deputy Mayor, I understand, and having joined us, what are your thoughts on the programme, Whole of Community Change, and what your community is engaged in with transforming yourselves along with Annalise Jennings?
I'm looking at Annalise. Annalise is a great person, and for her to come into the community and introducing her program. We first met her when the mayors from different diverse community in the Cape York got together, and that was the first time we saw her there, and that really captured us. That because the 10-year plan for Napranum was just on the way, and then I guess we were looking for someone who can help us, motivate us as councillor then to push something forward to bring about the dream for Napranum into reality, if you like. This journey with Annalise has changed me, myself, and as much as the young people in the community. And I was very much 100%, if you like, part of it from the beginning when it first launched in 2011.
Your recollections of the journey since these programs have begun, any particular moments that you remember that are strong in your mind, circumstances that you came across, witnessed, that were life-changing for yourself?
Well, the community was once stated as the fourth disengaged or disadvantaged community, Aboriginal community. With the changes in the government from the local Aboriginal council to Shire, we got elected during the time 2008, and that journey was pretty tough for us. It's like the changes in the community and trying to engage, getting the people of the community to understand the change that is happening. We went along together with that as much as the community when the government wanted changes happening fast. And I feel like the community has lost too much in the past. And I believe that it was time for a change then when this has happened and Great Lady came into effect in the community. It brought joy and pride, if you like, to all of us. And that has changed me, not only physically, if you like, spiritually as well, and wanted me to get engaged in the community more, to make me believe that I belong to a community and to have the community change where it's just lying there, full of dust. Someone has to make that move. And it was like, I believe in that. I truly believe in that things has to work and it will work and it has to come from within. And that really sort of motivated me to, I'm going to raise my hand, I'm going to help my community, the community I grew up in. And the journey began.
What would be the essential parts of that you felt that you lost and now perhaps you are remembering and regaining again?
We've lost the love, we've lost the respect for each other in the community, and then stereotyped as one of the other community that we're good for nothing. It's like we'll be dry and withered away. When I look at it now, it's there's a big change there. The community has sprung up like the flower in the desert, and it's ready to be picked, and it's just sitting there in the desert. And if you have the heart to help, help. So it takes the pride and joy that is lost in the heart to regain again over one person that came and gave that support. Basically, it's really in the people, but we all needed to have that motivation to make us believe that we can be loved again. We have that inside us, and we do have that light that is in us that has been hidden, and we can shine it again, and it's happening now.
Annalise, let me turn to you. These are great perspectives, are they not? I'm sure that wonderful for you to listen to, great retrospective. How do you view the lens through which both Maryanne and Beau are looking through?
I feel humbled, a little overwhelmed. From my perspective, I never ever stopped believing that this community could shift, ever. And when I stepped into that community, it was with an absolute language of this is not only probable or possible, but it is a certainty that a shift can happen, and I believed that completely with all of my heart. And that was the lens that I was looking through when I stepped into the community. And, to hear back from two women that I have massive respect for and I hold in such high regard, to hear their views and the lens that they see all of this through is very humbling.
Thank you, Annalise. According to our general notes, broad stroke that we created for the episode today, I think we're going to separate this out into two principal areas. First one talking about the infrastructure of an Indigenous community, and secondly about the leadership and capability programs that you hold. Starting off with the infrastructure for our listeners, how would you describe, Annalise, the infrastructure of an Indigenous community? Sounds like a rather simple question, I guess, but very important because it's going to be very different to the sort of infrastructure that you would have in a mega city or in an urban environment.
I can speak to the infrastructure that I didn't see in the community and that I would expect to see in any community, whether it's Indigenous or otherwise. There was no supermarket, there was no shop, there was no civic centre or library or arts centre, there was no school. This is a community that had its school taken away about 10 years ago. There was no war memorial. There was an oval that hadn't been resurfaced and youth at risk of hurting themselves on the oval. No night lights, no speed bumps, no public transport. When I think back to that only 2.5 years ago, and you ask the question about infrastructure, my mind goes to the infrastructure that I expected to see, and it just wasn't there.
Let me ask that question to Maryanne Coconut. I think it's a valid question here. Infrastructure, it's probably an overcomplicated type of language I handed to you, but if you were to describe the infrastructure, the layout, how things look, what is the road plan, how does it look for somebody who would be coming in from a completely different type of township or city, how would you describe that, Maryanne?
I would describe the way people look at things through their eyes, and also the mind shift of the thinking with the development around. that blows their mind and not depressed anymore, but are happy, not only individually, but as a whole community and as families in the community. Of course, most of all, I believe that seeing that our community is free from violence and breaking in, to see that we have law and order, which is, I'm a local chairperson for the Aboriginal Justice Group, and not only looking at a bed of roses, because I always say when there's a bed of roses, weeds will always grow there. So with the mind shift, always take the weeds out. And it can be physically and spiritually with that infrastructure.
It's interesting, isn't it, Annalise? That mind shift is also in the same conversation dialogue, I guess, as energy that Maryanne had talked about in that mind shift. Have you witnessed that, Annalise? Do you see that mind shift? Is that evidence in a tangible form?
I have witnessed it, and I'm not in the community always. I come in and out of the community, and I see a different conversation. I see a different energy. You know, there's a buzz in the community, and it's evidenced by the amount of employment and infrastructure development. You know, last week I was asked to speak at the opening of the new supermarket, and there would have been over 150 people there, maybe more actually. It was a fantastic event. You know, people are turning up to things, people are turning up to gatherings, they're interested in what's happening in the community. There's a greater relationship between the people, between community and the relationship that exists with government even. There's an emergence of a new conversation, a new story, a new narrative. So absolutely, I see the absolute shift, the absolute difference.
Is that perhaps, Annalise, because when we talk about mind shift, we could also associate that with an added or increased mobility, not just in terms of logistics around town, but also a mobility in the mind, in the spiritual being. Is that indicative of a community that feels that it's becoming more mobile in its day-to-day living?
I believe so. I believe it's indicative of a community that has a very strong level of self-belief, a strong level of working together. The values that are most evident in this community now are the values of ownership, of fairness, of working together. You know, these are values that are very, very prominent, and these aren't just words on a chart. You know, this is part of now the DNA. This is part of the social fabric of this community.
What about yourself, Bo? What are your responses to this? That it is more mobile, that there is a higher energy shift, that there is a greater mind shift taking place. How do you see that emerging in the day-to-day life?
Well, previously, I for one would always say Napranum will always be the same. Napranum will not grow. Napranum will not change. I was in the negative thoughts. But when we got engaged with the leadership program and the skills and the capability program, because I commenced, I wanted to believe in myself that I can help change the community by myself changing from the negative to a positive thoughts. And that worked for me. We went on a journey through really isolated with these waterfalls, and we went through that, and it was beautiful because when I returned, I stepped out my door and I said, I'm going to help change this community. I got myself engaged with a lot of young people, and talking to them, the same thing would come from them, the negativity. And then when the capability program, the workshop happened, I went through a lot of homes where parents would say, I need help. My child doesn't have the energy, just doesn't want to go anywhere, don't even want to get engaged with anything. My child is stressing me out. And so I sat with the parents and shared with the parents, this is what's going to happen when Annalise comes up. This is what the program will be about, even talking to the young people. And then we had the capability program. There was about 30 of them. Most of them was the ones that wouldn't get up and do anything. Today, I see the changes happen, that the majority of them are full-time workers, engaging themselves in TAFE, tertiary education. Others are saying to me, is there any other options? Can we join the army? Can we do this? Can we do that? That's all positive mindset. What they're sharing is, I want to help change the community. I want things to happen in the community. I want better things to happen. This is what I see now, the massive changes happening in such a short time. And I would rather it continue, and with us holding hands together and we help each other, even the young ones, the generations to come.
As the community engagement officer, that role in itself must have adapted a great deal through this transition, through this transformation. Do you see that as well for anybody who would come into the role today compared to where you stepped into that role, that it would be a completely different picture for that person now in that position?
Being a community engagement officer, it was like I had the power given by the council that I can get up and I have nothing to hold back, nothing to hide. It's like all positivity, and it also have driven me to help the parents as well, as much as the elders, and being that good citizen, helping everyone. And it was only a 6 month program. But today they're still looking up to me and they're still asking me, and I'm still giving them what I have inside. It's still helping the community, and I feel great about it, that I've done so much in such a short time as well. And it's a massive handful work to do. To me, I loved it, and I'm still loving it by thinking of it. And I only wish that there's a position like that for me to get out there and do it again. I mean, it's just a never-ending thing. You have that in your heart, you get out there and you help others.
Thank you, Bo. Let me ask you, Annalise, for a brief description as we talk about the Leadership and Capability Program. What are the hallmarks of those programs from your perspective?
Empowerment and choice are the two key elements of that program, but I'd just like to touch briefly on something that Bo said, in that the community engagement officer role was a 6 month post. But even though that post has finished, it was a finite time, but Bo has kept going. And so she is the epitome of, she is the champion of this. You know, she's participated in the programs, she's been part of that creation of the visionary plan, and then to be given a 6 month secondment, and even though the secondment is finished, she is still acting in that champion role. And so I really wanted to acknowledge her for that. And so coming back to your point about the hallmarks of the in particular the Leadership and Capability Program, that's one of 5 components to the whole of community change. And that program is very much around the individual getting really clear about their values, their strengths and their potential, and then to take them through a career profiling process where they identify the career pathway that is well matched to their strengths and values. So again, we come back to this place of choice and empowerment. So it's not about going out there and finding a bunch of jobs and saying, here's a bunch of jobs, it's for you to take it or not take it. I actually find that process most disrespectful. This is about young adults getting really clear about who they are and what they want, and then going out there and making it happen. So behind the scenes, the Leadership and Capability Program is also about lining up the aspirations of these young adults with appropriate employment opportunities. And this is where our strategic partners play a role, whether it's Rio as part of the mining, or whether there's a number of other employment opportunities. So this is matching people's education, life skills and aspirations to the right employment. But it's not only that, it's also about them being able to come back to the philosophy of whole of community change, which is about growing the community from the inside. So many of these young adults, albeit that some of them are working outside of the community, they are still leaders in this community. And they demonstrate that leadership through a number of different avenues. And again, I just want to say, Bo has really, demonstrated that, she really is a champion of this change.
Does that, Annalise, suggest that this type of service will extend for others in similar roles, that they won't in fact stop at the end of their contract or whatever that is in the community?
Well, coming back to, feedback that Bo, Maryanne and others have given me, what I am hearing about people who are coming through the program is that once they go out and find work, or they find work within the community, even when that job stops, there's still a mindset of, I'm going to get up and I'm going to take the next step, and I'm going to go out there, I'm going to find another job. So there isn't a conversation of giving up and stopping. So absolutely, once that mindset shift is there, you can never ever go back. And something that I said actually at the opening of the supermarket is that when I think of Napranum and the people of Napranum, I think dream builders, I think visionaries. And once you're a dream builder, you can never go back to an ordinary existence. It's just not possible. And so I believe that's what these young adults are demonstrating as they're coming through this process and this program, is their will, their desire to just get up and take the next step.
Maryanne, that is a wonderful phrase, is it not? Dream builder. There's something very spiritual, very archetypal, but also very modern in that it's a great way to describe the progress. Dream builder. What do you read out of that from your perspective?
I believe that education is the key to knowledge. You unlock the door that opened many doors for education to educate you, to dream dreams and be a dream builder, to be the person who you are, to believe that you are this person, not just stand alone, but the whole community.
Annalise, how would you further define that before I ask Bo? Because education today is not about rote learning or logistics or anything else, is it? It's about the art of allowing people to shine through their own selves, through their own energies. Where does education stand in this, in the programs?
There's two elements to it. There's the mindset that says I am a learner. And so to put yourself in that mindset that says I am a learner really puts you in that mindset of transformation, to always see yourself as being open to change, as being open to learn, as being open to try new ideas. And then there's the practical side of it, of going out there and actually educating yourself through certificate training, through degrees, through university, whatever that is for you. And I agree with Maryanne that education really is that key to knowledge. I believe it's an important criteria. And so whole of community change looks at empowering young adults to identify a career pathway that they are passionate about, that they're in tune with, and then matching the appropriate education to that career pathway. But it also starts with students as young as year 7 to start the conversation about who am I, What am I here for, and what are my values? And through the student career life coaching program, it's about students, parents and educators actually coming together in a conversation about the vision of that child and supporting that child. So when we start that conversation as young as year 7, that's powerful. That's really powerful. And we start the conversation about employability skills, learnability skills. And what we're seeing in Napranum is that as the young adults are stepping into opportunities even within the community, and the housing project is a great example of this. This is the first housing joint venture, I believe, that exists in an Indigenous community, and Napranum have taken up that challenge as principal contractors. So they now have their own housing joint venture, and Indigenous people working on the design of their own homes and on the building of their own homes. And what we're seeing is that the younger generation are saying to the young adults who are in that housing project, how do we do that? How do we get into that? They're taking notice, and the elders are mentoring and supporting those people through that change and through those job opportunities. So it's a whole community approach where the elders are there as the mentors, the young adults are stepping into opportunities, and the younger generation are looking up and saying, wow, how do I become a part of all of this? So it's all clicking, it's all working together. It's like a tapestry.
I think in many ways what you're painting there is our intergenerational world. Is where all generations are all not only teaching but also learning from each other, and I truly believe that is an evolution in consciousness today that we quite possibly never seen before. But let me ask you, Bo, education. That old Latin word education, it doesn't mean to teach really, it means to draw out, doesn't it? So it's talking about the inner wisdom. So this is really interesting, is it not? That inner wisdom that all of the generations of a community like Napranum are drawing from each other, whatever their age. There's something very powerful about that acknowledgement of inner wisdom that's coming from your traditions, your history, but also coming in the now today as you progress with these programs.
Someone once said, sky's the limit or star's the limit, but the son said to the father, no, Dad, it's beyond the sky, it's beyond the stars. So education reaches far. Education starts at home. To get the one to reach or fulfill the dream, it starts at home. What I've learned being the engagement officer for the community, even though I attend like universities and stuff like that, I'm still classed myself as uneducated. So I learn from others, and I go home, I teach the children, I teach the grandchildren. This is what I've learned, and it's something new for them because that's not in the curriculum. It's not something that you read from the book. It's built in individual. And I believe that what each and every one of us has is different from the individual, and we are inspired by comments, as I am inspired by Maryanne's comment. That's education, and I'm learning from that. I'll go home and I'll dwell in that. And as much as Annalise, and as much as your spiritual conversation with you, David, I'm learning a lot. It's not something that will start from grade 1. It's inbuilt, it's in us. It's given, it's God-given, I would say that. And for us to climb the stairs in that education-wise. Through education, we see around things are happening in my community, Napranum, and I am overwhelmed with that because it's just education that's driving from the individual, the wisdom that everyone has. that brings that together, and that makes that ripple effect. For me, I'm truly believing that.
There's some wonderful statements there made by both Annalise and Bo. Bo talked about being the built-in perspective of the individual, beyond the skies, beyond the stars. In that purpose of remembering from your eyes, Maryanne, is this also an inner wisdom that is being created because of these programs, because of this transformation, that is creating an inner wisdom that is being transported to us into our minds from people from the past, from our ancestors? Is that all part of that remembering now that we're traveling through?
Yes, it's a bit different, but it's still education in a way, culturally, spiritually, physically. Sometimes when people talk about education, they only think about school and universities and tapes. But to me, education is every day. When you learn something new, when you have a conversation with someone talks about something, and in a way you feel that you've been educated at that moment when you had the speech with another person. And it's the way we put the language that we educate ourselves to speak the way we can speak, so that we can communicate with other people around us, whether they're young children, young adults, senior elders. Every day is a day when we educate ourselves and others. It never stops. It's always every day.
Annalise, let me just return back to you as we refer back to our narrative. Bo talked there about beyond the skies, beyond the stars, and one of the points that we were going to briefly touch on was the ability to take this model, these projects, these programs beyond the boundaries of Napranum into other communities. Is that something that is working, and do you see that being reflected so that there is even more educational value here bouncing between communities?
A number of communities have engaged in the initial stages of whole of community change. Napranum is the only community that has actually taken it full cycle from concept to actuality. So it comes back to choice. And this topic of education is just so insightful because it comes back to those age-old questions: who am I? What am I here for? What is it that's deeply meaningful to me? And that's to my mind, the beginning of that education process. And so the choice is there for other communities to take if they want to. And that's where it sits at this stage. So in a previous dialogue, you asked me and Maryanne, what is the vision for this going forward? And it is to be able to deliver a message of change to Indigenous communities all over the world, to say, in this pocket of far north Queensland, we've taken this conversation of education beyond boundaries to the stars, to the universe. And so it's there, it's a choice.
It's an interesting time, Annalise, because it's no longer about the words reluctance, is it? It's not about reluctance anymore in any community or any human being to adopt these incredible transformations. It's just time. It's just time. But then again, with dialogues like this and people listening across the world, how amazing is it that technology allows these sorts of experiences and advancements to take place and to be shared? That's what it's all about today, is it not? And obviously, Annalise, you can see that as a vision that this will go very, very far, well beyond the confines of Queensland.
Absolutely. The process of creating a values-based community is real and it's working. And that's our message. This works. And Bo mentioned earlier that this starts at home. And Maryanne touched on that also. And so when I think about that from my own experience, I have two sons. And from when they were really, really small, I started the narrative and the education of, you are resourceful, resilient, compassionate young men. You are resourceful, resilient, compassionate young men. And I would write it on all their Christmas cards. And I'd write it on all their birthday cards, just in this little, corner of the card. You are resourceful, resilient, compassionate young men. And my sons are in their 20s, and I have to say, right here, right now, they are resourceful, resilient, compassionate young men. That's education. Where do they take that? Where do their journeys take them when they fundamentally believe that that's who they are? And they do. They are well on the path of service and contribution. So the best that we can do is to be it for ourselves, to expand that to our children. And I spoke about the true meaning of what dynamic exchange actually means, and it is the flow of energy that exists within us, between us to other people, between us to the environment, between us to society, to humanity, and beyond. So I really love this new narrative about education. It can take us anywhere. So the offer is there, the choice is there for people to take, if they want to, when they're ready, when the listening is there.
Surely it's all about listening and education. Yes, no doubt that's going to be a strong topic as we move forward. Maryanne, when we talk here, and Annalise mentions service and contribution, human relations comes into this. It seems to me, wrong or right on my part, but it seems to me that human relations is the most important dynamic today in our world, that has to be refined before anything else can really work, whether it's new types of energy or anything else. But human relations, how do you look at that and the way that it's working in the community today? Do you see a rising consciousness in human relations, in the way that people interact between each other?
Yes, I see it that way. And it's like a wake-up call when suddenly you have a different way of thinking. You have a changed mindset, and you want more of that because it's a positive energy, that you want more of this change, that mindset, and educating the people around you and yourself too, to go beyond the boundaries that you set for yourself and to make those choices that no one tells you what to do, but it's from within you that you are taking the step forward.
Bo, you clearly in that role, engaging with people throughout the community, and Annalise and Maryanne have talked about education. Maryanne has just talked about change and mindset. But then I would ask, what about sustainability for that change, for that momentum, for that human accord, for the human relations in this? How do you continue that? How do you make that sustainable? Because that's an important part of this, isn't it? To make sure that that energy continues, that it doesn't wane, that it doesn't decrease, but just stays at a steady, balanced pace.
To answer that, I would see the continuous employment of community engagement officer, because each communities, wherever, needs to have this program happening. If you think you're in a neutral stage, get this on board, the empowerment program, because the engagement officer engages from the council to the community, and the council workers the employers, because with most of the young people that is working on apprenticeship, they need the motivation there. This is I'm talking from a community perspective. They would need someone to work in between the supervisors as much as the young people that are working, and to the families. Getting the families to understand that the young people are working, there is barriers there that they need to break through, and engaging also to the supervisors to understand what the young people are going through, the young employees. I would believe for this to continue is to have people believe with each other and to have this engagement happening with the capability program. And it's a must for the community, because what I see happen to Napanam now, I would rather that other communities engage themselves in that, because it's something that you would turn and look back and smile about and be happy about and rejoice about it. And to continue going, I would that the community council would continue have this position, full time, because it's a must. Without that, they'll crumble. But with this engagement thing happening between the council and the community, I support that 100% that it should be have it ongoing.
Thank you, Bo. Annalise, let me come back to you on that. Terrifically important again. I'm sure this engagement and the way that you drive this, there must be a huge connectivity between business, individuals, apprenticeships, young people, but also, most importantly, ensuring that all of this returns back to the kitchen table around which a family lives and talks and loves together. That must be an important concept, isn't it, in the whole of community change, where it's changing the values and the energies from all levels in that community.
Whole of community change is dynamic and evolving, so it doesn't stop. So it doesn't stop because a community plan is now in place, or because a strategy has been built, or because 90% of the community plans initiatives have now been ticked off in the space of just 2 years. It doesn't now stop. Whole of community change is dynamic. It has to continue to evolve. It has to continue to grow now in a new direction. And so continual engagement, continual tapping into the wisdom, the collective wisdom of the people is really important, to give that respect, that time and that trust to the people to say, okay, well, we're here now, where to now? Remembering that whole of community change starts with asking great questions. So there's no assumption of coming in with any predetermined agenda or any answers. So we start the process again. We start the process of engagement. What are we here for? What are we here to co-create? This is where we are now. Where do we need to go to next? And if we adopt that ongoing principle of that 30% tipping point where change becomes self-sustaining, there's a fundamental psychology behind that, where 30% of the community then engage another 30% and then another 30%. And so we come back to the concept of the ripple effect. So we keep that ripple effect going. We keep the conversation alive. We tap into the collective wisdom of the people and ask them, okay, where to next? And let's watch what evolves. The other point also, coming back to progressive government, is that it is absolutely essential that government continues to respond to the needs of the people. That shift in narrative, moving from paternalism, control and welfare dependency to empowerment, opportunity and community ownership, is absolutely essential, and that has to continue.
I can see how that ripple effect is ever moving, ever growing, and very dynamic and very different from community programs from the last 30 or 40 years. Really quite inspirational. We're coming towards the end of the program today, and for our listeners moving forward, we will always have a brief outline of a news item upon which will be expanded in the next episode. I'd like to ask you, Annalise, about the supermarket that opened recently that we will expand on next time. What were the thoughts? What did you witness when the supermarket reopened after some 10 years?
Well, it was 15 years. 15 years since the community's had a supermarket, 15 years since community people have been able to buy groceries from within their own communities. And my experience of being part of that opening is just an absolute excitement and joy in the community that says yes. And yes is very much a mantra of whole of community change. And there's a great quote that the answer to how is yes. And so, we've been saying yes for the last 2.5 years, and we're watching the manifestation of that yes come up around us in so many different ways. And not just the supermarket opening, but the War Memorial was also an absolute fundamental shift for this community. And I'd like Maryanne perhaps to elaborate on what the War Memorial actually meant to the community, because that was a huge step forward.
Absolutely. Maryanne, leave that for your response.
To me, I feel that our men that went out in the Second World War, they were our men from the community. And we had to talk about it to make the council see that we need some funding to build this war memorial that is so important for us, and to teach our children that what they look in the TVs about the war and how the men were brave to go out really happened in the Second World War, when our people went out to a place called Thursday Island in the Torres Straits. There's photos about the men. So now when you look at it, you see their grandchildren are joining the 51 Battalion here in Waqata, because they look at role models that they want to step in their shoes. War Memorial, lest we forget.
Thank you, Maryanne, and I'm sure that we'll be talking about that in further programs. Bo, let me ask you, not only the War Memorial, but what did the supermarket mean to you?
Supermarket is actually built on a foundation of the old school, and I left Thursday Island when I was only 10 years old and came in and lived here in previously Weipa South, they call it now Napranum. And when it first opened and I walked in, I felt that my younger spirit was still there hovering around in the building. I felt the sense of pride inside me, and I felt this great that I was part of the creation of this wonderful supermarket, and feel this great that my grandchildren are walking into the supermarket. And when I do my early morning walk, I feel this great that it's overlooking this beautiful harbor, beautiful Golden Beach. It's the community that I really love. I'm just further down, just a few steps down to the beach. That's where I got married. And I just love Napranum, and I love the supermarket. And it's the sense of pride. I'm walking in there and I'm smiling because it's something that got taken away from us when we were only little. And then we have this journey into town, which is so expensive for us to come to the supermarket here in Weipa. It's because it's only like 13 kilometers down from Weipa. and the taxi fares is massive. And I feel sorry for our local people because they have been strongly abused financially. And then when I look in the afternoon, in the morning, I don't have to come into town to buy bread, bacon, and eggs. I'll just go down to, I'm just 2 minutes down to the shop and I've got something for breakfast. So I'm happy. I'm just a happy person to see the shops.
Thank you for that, Bo. And we do come to the end of the program today. I'm going to ask each of you ladies for your final thoughts. I'll start with yourself, if I may, Annalise Jennings. Annalise, your thoughts today around the journey that we have taken in this first program in the series.
Well, it's been a wonderful remembering for me from where it started to where it is now, to be part of this from concept to actuality. And I feel massively privileged, and in particular to be given an Aboriginal name. I love my name, Keely, and I love what it represents for Lorikeet. And so I'm sitting here feeling very, very blessed right now.
And to yourself, Bo, your final thoughts, having appeared for the first time, and I'm sure will be appearing many times in the future of our journey today.
I'm a public speaker. I love facing people. I love sharing my vision. I love sharing what I have achieved. And I want people to follow my footstep, if you like, because it's so positive. And I enjoy being here. And I'm enjoying talking to you, David, being part of the team here with the elder for Napana, Maryanne. Yeah, I'm privileged and I'm really blessed. Thank you.
Thank you, Bo. And I'll finish off the program today, if I may, with Maryanne Coconut. Maryanne, your last thoughts for today, and maybe even, if you would, a story that you can recount as we close the program today for our listeners.
Well, with the supermarket, that's where I grew up. That's where our village was. It holds childhood memories. In my days growing up, there was no hospitals. And we had cultural midwives that delivered babies. And I was one of them. And I was born right there where the supermarket is. So it gives me pride and joy. And later on, the council, Napanamshire Council, will move down there also. It will be a one-stop shop. And I'm privileged that they asked me to name the library after me. And so now I like to say thank you to our great creator spirit. Talking to you, I feel that I'm sitting face to face with you, talking with you. So spiritual. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maryanne. I wonder if you will ever know my feelings today. It's such an enormous privilege. I'll start off with yourself, Annalise Jennings. Annalise, thank you so much for today.
Thank you, David.
Maryanne Coconut, thank you very much, and look forward to many more discussions with you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
And Bo Waqata, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you too, David. It's a pleasure too. Thank you.
And to our listeners today, this has been episode 1 of the long-term series Whole of Community Change. This was just one of 5 components of that community change that we'll be discussing in future times. We do hope that you have enjoyed this program as much as we. You can gain information on this and any other program in the series at the official website davidgibbons.org, or for international facilitated panels crossingoverthebridge.com. Meanwhile, wherever you are in this world, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.